收，当然。直播。社畜周六还要加班打包，真可怜。社畜。开始直播。最顶3个人，效率低选好。显示了，然后加了，显示了。OK 了，加班了。19就是加班了。效能低群高钙蛋白。效能低群高钙蛋白素。双直播。发型可以吗？可以。跟大家打招呼。嗨 ，Jokeland。加班吗？看有没有人要陪我一起加班吗？快没心了。可以用相反吗？哎呦，镜像开启都可以哦。镜像开启可以，这样就好。这可以镜像吗？好像不行。好吧。OK， 好产品哦。哎呦，打包了。打包了。打包了。打包了。打包了。打包了。打包了。不放弃。我在加班呢，加班中呢。正在加班中啊。OK。 领券啊，领券哦，领券消费哦。看不去。
Right now, President Trump is returning from a whirlwind trip to China. What was he able to accomplish, and what deals were left on the table? Plus,
clearly an effort to intimidate by China. We'll stand up to it.
Xi warns Trump on Taiwan. Trump says nothing publicly. Is that the best possible outcome? And the CIA director actually went to Havana as the island nation runs out of fuel. Is Cuba's leadership about to get Maduro?
And the American people, we believe, are going to push back aggressively.
So Judge Jill's Democrats another redistricting setback, but are voters the real losers in all of this? And taco turmoil in Texas, a Senate candidate's order spices up an already contentious race.
I think I know the order.
Yeah, breakfast tacos. That's right. I can realize.
We've settled a lot of different problems that other people will be making settle.
Okay, so the president is talking up his trip to China. What came out of that final meeting with Xi Jinping? I'm Audie Cornish. Good morning, everybody. I want to start with the final moments of that symbolic summit in Beijing. Chinese leader Xi Jinping hosted President Trump today at the party leadership compound for the final round of talks. The two signaled the issue of Iran.
零星的两个有下班了，零星素豆霜。
So I want to bring in CNN's Mike Valeria joining us now from Beijing. And Mike, I want to start about the actual details we've learned from each side. We've got the final readout.
You know, Audie, we have gotten one from Zhongnonghai, which is the headquarters of the Communist Party, but it doesn't say too many in terms of specifics. Let's just take a look at it a little bit to give you an idea. Very poetic. It starts with the mood of recalibrating ties. It starts off from CCTV, China Central Television, one of the state media outlets. In the late spring and early summer cities of Zhongnonghai, the greenery had deepened and the gardens were lush with vegetation. It goes on and on and on, says the two meeting in warm, of course, ties. And then at the very end, the final sentence, this readout, the only one that we don't have one from the American side. The Chinese readout says the two sides also exchanged views on several regional hotspot issues. But we don't know what exactly those are, if they're Taiwan, if they're Iran, or something else. And of course, you know, to your point, and as we were talking about and reading the show, with this question is what exact specific trade deals are going to come out of this reset relationship? You know, we had Jameson Greer, the U.S. trade rep, talk about that on Bloomberg a couple hours ago. Let's listen to his soundbite, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
We heard the President today talk about the Boeings and hundreds of Boeings being purchased by China. We already have an agreement with them from our prior meetings of 25 million metric tons a year over the next 3 years. And we expect to also see an agreement for double-digit billion purchases of ags over the next 3 years per year. So that's more general. That's aggregate. That's not just that's everything.
You know, just a couple notes on that. Soybean right now are only bought by the government, so American farmers in the heartland are still hurting because private companies here on this side of the world in China aren't buying soybeans at the level that they used to. So we are waiting to see, you know, is that going to become part of the conversation? Is that going to be a tangible deliverable? But so far, radio silence on that as of now. And also the Chinese government hasn't said anything about these Boeing orders, whether they're going to be mid-size or larger jets. The specific 200 number, that hasn't been revealed as well. But here, I think that we should convey to everybody who's back home in the United States that certainly the effort by Xi Jinping and Donald Trump to recalibrate the relationship, again, at least for now, seems to have permeated down to people, you know, just carrying out their everyday lives in Beijing. We had the opportunity, after the two leaders strolled through the Temple of Heaven, to interview a couple people on the streets of Beijing. So I want you to listen to what some said, certainly expressing optimism and some even grateful for the trade policies that President Trump has put into place. Listen.
As ordinary people, of course, we don't hope for any conflict between the two countries, both American powers. If there is conflict, it is actually not very good for either country.
Trump's policies of imposing external sanctions have actually further galvanized and drive the self-reliance and independence. In that respect, I actually quite like this president.
So, 川简约, that is the Chinese phrase that means nation builder. Donald Trump's nickname here in China. People are grateful that because of these restrictive trade policies, that China, from their point of view, has had to develop its own advanced AI chips. So again, we're waiting to see what, if anything, is going to happen with the war in Iran. What exactly is going to happen with these business deals? A lot of fanfare, but we're going to see if the rhetoric matches the reality of it.
That's my area reporting. Thank you so much. And our coverage of the president's trip to China is going to continue. The president has been saying that Xi Jinping suggested that the U.S. is a declining nation. President Trump says he thinks that Xi was talking about Biden's America, so he makes a reference there. Protesters in Utah demand that an AI data center project be shut down. Why? They say the risks outweigh the rewards. And survey work has begun on the president's newest project, his arch. Who's this for?
Who is the arch being built for?
Who's it for?
Well, for the American people, Donald Trump was asked this question specifically on the record. He said this arch is for him. He said his answer was me.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta. What if I told you that our hair is more than what we see in the mirror? It's something that can actually tell us a lot about our health.
Hair is so core to our identity. It's part of how we see ourselves. It's how we present ourselves to the world. And in evolutionary biology, hair is a sign of vitality, of health.
Dr. Marianne Makuta Sena. She's a board-certified dermatologist and associate professor at Harvard Medical School who specializes in hair and scalp health. We're going to talk about the different types of hair changes, share some practical tips for keeping your hair and scalp healthy, and my personal favorite, we're going to bust some pretty big hair myths that you have probably heard. Listen to Chasing Life, streaming now, wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm CNN tech reporter Claire Duffy. This week on the podcast, Terms of Service. Tell me if you've felt this way while sitting at your desk at work. Eyes burning, back and shoulders curled up like a boiled shrimp, and feeling cranky. That is how journalist and podcast host Manoush Zomorodi describes the experience of working at a desk in front of a laptop all day in her new book. Today, on average, information worker, most of us are information workers, 90% of our time is spent. That's wild. It increases the possibility of diabetes, obesity, all sorts of chronic health issues. Listen to CNN's Terms of Service wherever you get your podcasts.
The relationship is a very strong one, and we've really done some wonderful things, I believe.
Wonderful thing.
President Trump leaves China feeling good about his relationship with Xi Jinping. Is the Chinese leader feel the same? Trump is downplaying Xi's previous comment about the West being in decline. He posted this, quote, when President Xi very elegantly referred to the United States as perhaps being a declining nation, he was referring to the Biden administration. Trump said Xi was not referring to the, quote, 16 spectacular months of the Trump administration. So he's making that distinction. We weren't exactly hearing that from the leader of China. Here's how Xi characterized the relationship yesterday.
Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. Our two countries should be partners rather than rivals.
Joining me now in this morning, our was political anchor for Spectrum News, Jeanette Hoffman, Republican strategist, and Matt Rose, former New York congressman. And we're going to have a former ambassador to China on later to really try and discern what was happening. But the Trump side of it, we all recognize, which is he leaves the meeting with the leader and tells us his version of events. Does that match what she made sure to say publicly?
I don't know if it matches what Xi has accomplished for himself. He wanted to be seen, he wants to be seen as a major leader on par with the United States. He certainly didn't retract any word or even sentiment of the West being in decline and China being, in its ascendant.
So it was weird to be like, he's talking about Biden, because I feel like, A, China does not think in terms of 4-year stints. You know what I mean? The way that leadership works, the way they approach the world, they don't sit around parsing out our politics? And it wasn't wishful thinking. Like, how do you look at that?
I think this is classic Trump. He's never going to take any insults directed at him. He's going to say, of course, that's Biden or Obama or any other president but President Trump, right? So I think it is, this is classic Trump saying this is the best meeting ever. But time will tell whether it was successful or not. What will happen in Iran? Will President Xi play some role in getting
I was
this?
going to say, okay, by what metric, right?
Right.
Like, is it by your trade deals? Is it by, China sector Iran? Like, there's a lot of ways you could look at this meeting and decide it's successful or not successful. What did you see, Matt?
Yeah, I don't see this necessarily as rocket
Sensible.
science. They didn't get anything done in the meeting. It was pure theatrics, pure performance.
In all the
China,
performance?
well, not in the face of the potential for China stepping in and doing something in regards to Iran. Let's not forget here, within the last month, China provided targeted information directly via Russia as well to Iran to attack American bases and to attack our ally Israel. That is not semantics.
But I have to say, Hannity on Fox actually asked Trump about this, saying like, hey, what about China? I bring this up with you a lot. And Trump said, look, they're not attacking, this is not aggression towards the U.S. specifically, and really kind of, it's not necessary to get to where the U.S. wants to
We
be.
should tell that to, we should tell that to the hundreds of soldiers who have been injured in the Middle East since this conflict began. China directly played a role in that. I'm not to say we should ignore this other extraordinary power.
Yeah, but you are correct. China is not our friend. They are our adversary. And two things can be true at the same time. We need to treat them like that, but they are also very important to our economy. And what we said before about that trade deal is very important. It's said that $38 billion of tariffs are being, contemplated right now on the table. We'll see if that deal is struck. Secretary Bessent said it may be.
It may be, yeah. I'm going to pop quiz now on the Thucydides trap. We've all got to brush up on our philosophy. Basically, Xi Jinping brought this up in his opening remarks, and the question now is whether China and the U.S. can transcend the so-called Thucydides trap and pioneer a new paradigm of major country relations. And he's referring to this idea that, the conflict that can emerge when there's an emerging power threatening an existing power. And China's been emerging for a long time. Like, they definitely, reached a certain point.
It falls perfectly into the narrative that he wants to project both to his people and to the world, which is that we are the rising power, right? We are Athens. The United States is Sparta. They're threatened by
Biden
us.
wasn't there. Like, it wasn't.
发散
No,
克
it's
数
a
horizon,
kind
let's
of a
say.
broader
发散
frame
克
than
的
the
数
last 48 months, for sure. And I, look, of course, it would
胡
completely
桃
pass
浓
Trump
缩汁
personally,
胡桃
but
酒
it's
醋
also a
胡桃做的醋
framework that relates to trade, right?
Okay.
We need to sell them soybeans. That's the trade relation we need to have happen. We're buying rare earth minerals from them. Who's getting the better part of that?
We also learned during Trump's tariff war that China is not afraid to hit back hard and quickly
发散
Like,
克
they're not
数
going to ramp up. They're just going to go to 10. And it does feel, and maybe you can tell me, like, the way Trump
玻
spoke
璃
about
的
China
要打
as
包
a
好
candidate,
一点
right, and then going into office, it is dramatically different now that we are in the reality of
玻璃
politics.
的
Absolutely. I mean, listen, China is our enemy and all this, and then you heard a very different tone yesterday. President Xi is my friend, and he knows that we need China economically. And listen, Americans are suffering under tariffs right now.
Yes,
We need to strike
and
that
farmers,
deal.
specifically to your point about soybeans. All right, you guys stay with me. We're going to dig into some different aspects of this conversation. After the break, though, we're going to turn to this Cuba in crisis. No fuel, no money. Is the U.S. coming to rescue them, or is its embargo making things worse? Plus, Tennessee's will stand. The Democrats think this will work out in their favor politically. And a live look at Hawaii's Kilauea volcano, which is erupting right now on the Big Island. That's lava shooting almost 200 feet into the air. Okay, it's now 22 minutes past the hour. Here is your morning roundup. Some stories you might have missed. A judge in Tennessee has rejected an attempt by Democrats to pause the use of a new congressional map. The new map would give Republicans control of all 9 of the state's House seats. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries accused Southern Republicans of trying to erase decades of progress he believes voters are forgetting about.
His determination and righteous resolve to push back against this unprecedented effort in modern American history to turn back the clock bring us back to the Jim Crow era in terms of black representation in the Deep South. And we're not going to stand for it.
Here's for those redistricting. And now new maps favor Republicans 15 to 6. Okay, you are looking at hundreds of protesters gathered at the Utah State Capitol Thursday, demanding a say into a massive AI data center project. One of the backers of the project, Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary, is behind it, and the state's governor is also in support.
AI is just destroying everything. We don't need it. We need water.
The more and more we learn about it, the more it's going to be obviously harmful to humanity.
We care about it, so we care about our air, water, land.
A new Gallup poll out this week shows that 7 in 10 Americans oppose building data centers in their communities. The main concerns being the environment and quality of life. And workers are surveying the space for Trump's triumphal arch in Virginia's Memorial Circle. Many congressional leaders are actually opposed to the construction. They brought this up during a committee hearing on Wednesday. Secretary of Interior Doug Burgum was asked if, basically, who's this for?
There is a proposal to build this arch. Who is it for?
There's a discussion about it. I would say there's not a proposal.
Who's it for?
Well, for the American people, just like everything else in this thing.
So the arch actually still needs a further approval by the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts. And the grandson of John F. Kennedy is defending his campaign for Congress after reports of running an erratic operation. Jack Schlossberg told CNN's Dana Bash that the New York Times report is just a consequence of being the front runner for a seat in the heart of Manhattan.
There's a lot of that article that's not true, but you know how this works. Once you're declared the front runner and early voting starts less than a month, everyone's got something to say. People are trying to figure out how our campaign has been so successful and why we're winning in every single poll.
Okay, he's right in that, more money, more problems. So tell me from the position of a New Yorker.
He is considered the front runner. His opponents have put out polls saying that they are running close to him. Even his opponents have internal polls that say that he is in the lead. What that is a result of, it's hard to say. He doesn't have an extensive background in public service.
I was about to say, some of this is maybe the first time, like when you remember Kamala Harris's campaign after the first campaign, also had one of these reported pieces that came out that was like, everything was bad, it was run terribly. And she came back and ran a very short, effective campaign. And I think I'm curious about whether this is learning curve.
Could be. As someone who's been on the inside of campaigns, running campaigns as a consultant, kind of feel bad for the campaign workers because it's the first time somebody probably trust fund baby.
What's then erratic code for? Tell me the truth. When you're call a reporter and leave erratic.
Discipline, but listen.
Is that code for you to listen to me?
Probably. I think the fact he's paddleboarding in the Hudson every single day. So, that's a lot of hard work.
Good detail. All right, straight ahead on CNN this morning, President Trump has been quiet on the issue of Taiwan. We want to know whether there's a sign that the policy the U.S. has there could change after a stern warning from China. Plus, he says he's a Trump ally, so why did the president back his opponent in tomorrow's primary? Good morning, everybody. I'm Audie Cornish. Thanks for joining me on CNN this morning. It's 1:30 the hour, and here's what's happening right now. The Supreme Court allowing continued access to the abortion pill, mifepristone, at least for now. Comes amid back and forth over telehealth and mail access to the medication. While Louisiana pushes to limit availability in lower courts. Now, the court did not explain its reasoning, nor did it reveal the final vote count. Tomorrow, voters head to the polls in Louisiana. The Republican Senate primary will be a test of President Trump's power within the party. So Senator Bill Cassidy, who actually voted to impeach Trump, is running for re-election. And he faces a challenge from Representative Julia Letlow, who Trump has endorsed, and State Treasurer John Fleming. One ship is sunk, another ship is in the Strait of Hormuz Thursday, while President Trump is trying to get China to convince Iran to reopen this vital waterway. The UK Maritime Center says a ship anchored off the coast of the UAE was seized and taken toward Iran. Another ship, an Indian-flagged cargo vessel, was attacked and that one sank off the coast of Oman. All the crew members on that ship were rescued. And it's unclear this morning if U.S. policy towards Taiwan will change after President Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping in China.
Talk about Taiwan, Mr. President.
So Trump did not respond to questions from reporters about whether he and Chinese leader Xi Jinping talked about Taiwan during their meeting. Xi has called Taiwan the most important issue in China-U.S. relations and warned it could create a very dangerous situation if mishandled. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the issue of future U.S. arms sales to the island has been discussed in the past, although did not feature prominently in these discussions. He also added that U.S. policy on Taiwan has not changed.
And they always raise that issue, and we understand they raise that issue. From our perspective, any forced change in the status quo in the situation up there now would be bad for those countries.
I think we chatted back, but this time we're having Alex Pistis join us. He's a CNN national security analyst. I'm glad you're here because this is one of those conversations where what is unsaid is as interesting as what is said. So what did you take from the way she was so forward in talking about Taiwan and Trump's silence?
First of all, this is a very sensitive topic. So it's a confusing policy for anybody who's watching in the U.S. So for those of you at home, there's what we call the one China policy, right? Where China believes it's one China, including Taiwan, as a breakaway province. And the U.S. says that we believe in that, but for years we've been selling about $500 million a year on average on arms sales to Taiwan.
In 2025, U.S. arms sales ran to $11 billion, and 2026, $14 billion. It's significant because Taiwan was trying to basically remind people of this relationship heading into the conversation, and she was reminding the U.S. it's still.
Absolutely, and that's Trump. The largest economy in the world, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, the chips are produced there. All kinds of
有大中小的，你这个是有更大的。不会太小哦。我等一下找一下给你看的。对啊，我等一下找好请你过来。你要什么意思？
got together in the middle of the Pacific, forming basically a and that was meant to serve as a practice disruption for ships.
Yesterday that they had bumped up their sort of timeline for when they would
那你们要过来上镜头？
so to speak, to 2027.
你们要过来上镜头？
So I think maybe that's why you've got this bipartisan
可以啊，你就很自然啊，你就说你要用这个亚麻油黑肥皂，跟大家讲，现在有20个人在上面。
And they'll deal with it on the back end because the focus of this trip, we didn't want it to be necessarily geopolitical. Iran, obviously, we rejected the last proposal that specifically 5 of the 14 points, but we haven't seen any military strikes yet, which could have been ordered. I don't think the president wanted that or any of the geopolitical issues to overshadow a trip based on economics.
One of the things I've been thinking about is how China, you know, it gives so much support to Iran in so many ways.
券哦，领券消费哦，折价350哦，多领券哦，多领券可以消费，有消费有折价哦。
Are they pushing the Iranians towards the table to talk more?
有直播，有看直播，有消费有折价哦。
Looking for in the coming days to show that Trump had made a difference there.
Sure. So for some of the interlocutors in the region and some of the folks that have been active over the years, I've been told that the Iranian foreign minister has been almost in daily contact with the Chinese foreign minister. I don't think there's been a desire to get involved at this point for a few reasons.
Wait, they're in daily contact, but they're not going to help.
Not to the extent where they're going to step in and sort of mediate. They don't believe that this war should start in the first place. That was the president's statement that came out from China. Was that
好产品哦，多补充油哦。
Straits need to be opened up to freedom of passage movement, etc. But it came with a very stern backhand on that, which was that this war should never happen in the first place, which is sort of a backhanded slap at the U.S. for initiating the conflict in Iran. So that's pretty much where the Chinese are coming from. Long story short, they know, like we just said, 2027, Xi Jinping told the PLA to be prepared to take Taiwan at the earliest.
感谢下单。
For them to become a global power at that point. Actually across the entire paradigm, diplomatic information, economic paradigm. So in the interim, as long as we're tied up in the Middle East and we're not pivoting toward the Pacific and 21, but there's a trade-off. There will come a point where if there's going to be a global recession or anything that can impact China, step in. But you're gonna kind of let this go as long as necessary.
Well, it's already hitting many of the folks in the Asia Pacific region, so we're going to see how that affects things long term. I want to ask about one other issue while you're here, which is Cuba,
Yes.
Because that's taken a turn. You had the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, visiting that island on Thursday to meet with intelligence officials. Juanito Rodriguez, who's the grandson of the former leader Raul Castro, and a CIA official told Axios that Ratcliffe's message was to take a lesson from the January operation that toppled Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. So for the average person in Cuba, like they are literally in the dark because the power, these sanctions have had a real effect. Take a listen.
Crude oil, fuel oil, of which we have absolutely none. Diesel, of which we have absolutely none. I'm being repetitive. The only thing we have is gas from our wells.
So
group chat is back. There is some humanitarian aid that the U.S. is offering to Cuba. For the non-government charities and things like that. But at what point does maximum pressure become maximum pain for people there? Like at what point does this become a humanitarian crisis?
Donald Trump has said that Cuba's next in line. And in light of what occurred in Venezuela and Iran just this year, I don't think anyone should be taking for granted the extent to which this administration are jingoistic warmongers committed to producing more forever wars, not less. Exactly the opposite of what they campaigned on.
Forever war? I mean, it's a decimated economy. What do you think about
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree. I don't think it's a forever war. I think Cuba needs America's help right now. They have no power. They're completely in the dark. As you said, they're out of fuel. People are literally eating garbage from the streets. According to Marco Rubio, they're being offered $100 million in humanitarian aid, which they desperately need right now, in exchange for their cooperation with the CIA and the intelligence community. I think that's a pretty good deal for Cuba right now. And there's reports that Raul Castro is definitely headed.
It's not just shades.
I mean, I call shades there's such a Caracas goggles that the president
Did you say Caracas goggles?
Caracas goggles. He had an amazing raid that came in. Maduro was out. This will call us not much change. But militarily, it was done. You got Delcy Rodriguez and supposedly cooperating with the U.S. We tried the same approach in Iran with the decapitation strikes. We're still in the middle of this issue now. And the theory here is the same thing, that if we can change the government out with enough pressure, that we can get policy change. So my understanding is that the president hasn't collapsed yet. And that Ratcliffe was there yesterday to deliver an ultimatum with a timeline that they need to get on board with God.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not a diplomat. It's the CIA. You know what I mean? Some of the senator's response here. It's Tim Kaine saying, I don't think we should assume he's bluffing. You've got Elizabeth Warren saying she should not attack another country, and that definitely includes Cuba. And then you had 52 Democrats write a letter to the president, and they said this: doubling down on failed strategies by restricting access to energy and healthcare is contrary to American values and needlessly exacerbating humanitarian crisis. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is because it's one thing to do what you did in Venezuela, right? For the U.S. to go in, pull something out, and frankly, leave a lot of it alone, right? The same government is in place. This is really destructive, you know, and this is right off the coast of Florida. Like, there feels like the aftermath of this will not be what happened in Venezuela.
No, I mean, in this case, 90 miles off the coast of Florida. I mean, Cuba has been hostile in terms of intelligence service and hosting a number of adversaries and helping sponsor issues throughout the region. So there's been, there's a reason we've had sanctions in place for sort of a long time. And so there's a bit of politics that goes back to the point about the sanctions. We have sanctions against a number of countries. And unfortunately, after 50 years in many other countries, they find this around still on stuff. Which is the relationship with Cuba and Venezuela was a problem. What I found particularly interesting yesterday was on the back end of the trip, what leaked out was that the U.S. is allegedly looking to indict Raul Castro for downing aircraft back in the 90s.
So just to be clear, there is someone somewhere preparing a formal indictment.
Yes.
Just like there was an indictment of Maduro, and this was leaked out of the CIA meeting. Not that I think CIA people would leak it.
No.
But let's say they might. And they're letting people know that, hey, this mechanism is there and you're willing to use it again.
Well, because that's the legal justice that was used. So in order to take military action, you have to have legal pretext for doing so. So Maduro raid, at least from legal explanation, was that the Department of Defense was supporting the Department of Justice in enforcing a warrant to extradite Maduro out of Venezuela. With enough firepower to retake most of the
加
country.
一下
That was
优
the
惠
point.
券，
Just helping.
优惠券出现了，
That's
这里优惠券
Here,
在这边有没有看到？
all of a sudden we've got indictments and a potential
这边有优惠券
down
哦，
the road if they don't cooperate. I think
可以
that's
领
a
优
clear
惠
message to
券。
people yesterday.
The big difference, of course, is that there's going to be a potent and vocal response by Cuban Americans. The politics will play out very differently. There are elected officials, there are organizations. The humanitarian crisis will come to the fore. There are a lot of people who still have family there, and we're not going to simply watch them starve.
Well,
in
as we
pursuit of
saw
a-
with both Iranian Americans as well as Venezuelan Americans, it does get complicated, right? When you don't want to see change in your home country, it comes at what could be a humanitarian cost. So I'm glad you're bringing that point up, Errol. Alex, as always, thank you for being here. Next on CNN this morning, now that the president is heading home from China, we're going to look at the scorecard, so to speak. Who's the real winner of the summit? Plus this.
What I'm thinking is, gotta get the street taco. I need maybe holy moly.
Okay, not with that taco winner, but did the Senate hopeful Obama this morning make a food faux pas that could change his campaign?
72出货订单。
This is an incredible visit. I think a lot of good has come of it. Made some fantastic trade deals, great for both countries.
Okay, President Trump came back to the U.S. after a two-day summit in China with what he claims are fantastic deals. Deals include an agreement to building aircraft and also billions of agricultural products and U.S. oil.
So what has happened, and one thing I think that we
B
that
群高看上
they want to buy oil from the United States. We're going to go to Texas. We're going to start sending Chinese ships to Texas and to Louisiana and to Alaska. And I think that was another thing that we could do. So what's a big thing?
So which side is claiming victory out of this summit? Joining us now is Nick Burns, former U.S. ambassador to China. Good morning, and also thank you for being here. I want to talk about the idea of the deals. It's not the first time the president has sort of claimed a deal out of China. Li Fei, the senior China economist at Capital Economics, pointed this out today. They were writing back in 2017, there were agreements worth more than $250 billion.
结束这个
And they mentioned